Saturday night Gray Matter live stream. I know it's been a beautiful day. I hope that everyone's been outside and been enjoying it. I believe it's been really sunny throughout Alberta, and hope it's been sunny where you are. But we really needed to have this important conversation tonight about truth. We've got a great guest, and we're going to talk about truth. We're going to talk about some really important things that are happening in Canada, not only politically, but socially and really spiritually, in terms of what's happening in our country and in our province. And so the theme of tonight is just in a broad sense is truth. And I know this is a concept that's very important to our guest, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. And so I've got a quotation from Herodotus, who's one of the great ancient Grecian thinkers, who said, "The most hateful grief of all human griefs is to have knowledge of a truth, but no power over the event." And I think that really captures the way a lot of Canadians feel right now, especially in Alberta, but I believe in other parts of the country. And on the subject of truth, of course, the truth, uh, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John 8, verse 32. As we always do, we've got our good friend and producer, Michael Clausen, with us, who's put this all together. Great job, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael's also the creator and host of the 5 a.m. podcast. He is with us tonight. Great to see you, Michael. How are you?
Thank you. Very good. Wonderful. Enjoying the August long weekend. Always nice. I went to my favorite woodworking store today, and thankfully, I guess they were closed. So their staff was having a long weekend too, which was great.
You know
So
you're a nerd when you go to the woodworking store on a Saturday when it's
that's
30
right.
degrees outside and they're
Yeah.
closed.
Yeah. Well, I did fit in a nice long motorcycle ride
Oh,
as
great.
part of that. Yeah.
Great.
So
So, Michael, you wanted to remind people to share this and make comments, right?
that's right. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you're watching, and as you do, we share things on social media. So, we're waiting for the room to fill up. People are coming in, and we're sending out some links. If you're watching, you're either on X, you're on YouTube, or you're on the Facebooks. So, please absolutely share this out. It's going to be a very important conversation. Not to steal anyone's thunder or let any cats out of the bag, but it's going to be a great evening. So please share this out with your friends. Also, we love that comment section, and I'm going to pay attention to it this evening.
Great.
Which means that when there are comments, I can put them up on the screen, and I can interrupt, as I'm apt to do, people's conversations, and we can turn our focus to you, where it belongs, for a moment or two, and so that's it. Share and comment. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Many of you will know our guest, but what I did tonight was something a little bit different. I don't usually do this, but I asked Grok, who is Grant Abraham? And this might interest Grant. This is what Grok says. It says, Grant is the founder and leader of the United Party of Canada, a right-of-center political party established to promote traditional Canadian values, focusing on sovereignty, family, and freedom. He's a lawyer and author. Oh, by the way, the book, folks, is terrific. This is it, The Battle for the Soul of Canada. This is a wonderful book. I don't know if he's written more books, but that one's enough. So he's a lawyer, author, humanitarian, and organic farmer. Grant has a background in international development, working in regions like Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe to rebuild communities through education and economic initiatives. He's married with 4 sons. I met one of his wonderful sons the other night, Samuel, great guy, and he resides in Calgary, Alberta. Grant entered politics after growing frustrated with the direction of Canada under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, here, particularly citing Trudeau's 2018 statement about Canada becoming a post-nation state as a catalyst for Grant's involvement. He ran for the leadership, Grant did, of the Conservative Party of Canada in 2022, raising the required $300,000 and securing endorsements, but was blocked by party officials, which he claims was due to his willingness to address issues like globalism and foreign interference. And this has led him to found the UPC to provide a grassroots, socially and fiscally conservative alternative. And we're going to get him to talk more about the party and its unique focus and character. But before we do that, I guess, Grant, why don't you, if that introduction is insufficient, why don't you fill in the blanks? By the way, welcome to the Gray Matter live stream. It's great to have you on the program.
It's a great pleasure to be here. I think that was a very appropriate and fitting introduction from Grok.
Wonderful.
And
Grok
I,
usually gets it right. I don't trust ChatGPT all that much,
well, I'm
but
pretty. That's pretty scary, and it's pretty impressive how it's woven all those bits together into a little synopsis. Pretty
well,
good. Well, look, I don't want to duplicate Grok, but I will say I'm here because the Canada that we grew up in is crumbling under our feet, and we need to have much different conversations than we're having. And the challenge for us, and I think why I'm here and why I'm running in the by-election in Battle River, is because a lot of Canadians are still in the mind space where we're talking about central Canada versus the West, or red versus blue. And I think what a lot of Canadians have failed to see is that why the country feels like it's being corroded, or the ground's collapsing under our feet, whatever metaphor you want to use. I often talk about being deconstructed by post-nationalism. Um, they're not seeing that, and our actual geopolitical landscape has moved on from the kind of peace, order, and good government of a safe and secure Canada to one that is uh, effectively destabilizing. Many people are wondering if it's already a failed state. It just hasn't toppled. And let's just say this: the locals have a lot of angst about the continuation of where this is going, and those are that are the kind of legal nerds that read the nuance of legislation that's coming out, feel the unraveling of what we understood as certainty in the rule of law. And so there's a whole load of conversations we can have. But I just decided, my family went overseas to fight against tyranny in World War II, fight and die
hmm
for the liberties and the freedoms that we have in this country. And in so many ways, we're being undermined by the exact same threats. They're just coming at us ideologically, and they're subverting our freedom.
hmm hmm
And it's not good enough just to say, well, you know what, I didn't have an effective opportunity to reform the Conservative Party of Canada, but that doesn't change my duty to speak into the governmental political framework in this nation with what is actually going on. And sometimes I think about Winston Churchill in the UK before World War II. He
right.
spent years fighting and contending and bringing truth to the tyranny that was rising up in Nazi Germany,
hmm
until everyone suddenly a switch flipped and they saw it.
Yeah,
And suddenly he had a voice that could influence a war.
yeah,
And we're kind of in that same space right now with what's
yeah. And
unraveling.
you're sort of doing the same job as Winston Churchill. In that vein, just to give people an idea, in the 1930s, Hitler was so popular. He was at time Man of the Year, and the English establishment, especially the BBC, did not want to do anything to upset Hitler. And Churchill used to spend his own money to buy radio time on BBC to try and warn the English people about what was happening in Nazi Germany. But he had to speak in code. So he talked about Hitler in terms of a dragon that was threatening England. But of course, most people understood what he was talking about. But it's hard to imagine that now, looking back through the lens of history. But closer to home, Grant, as you know, you're running in this by-election in Battle River, and we had a debate the other night in Tofield, which is just wonderful. I thought you were great. I had the privilege of moderating it. Sadly, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada was in Tofield, but decided to go door knocking rather than come and speak to the people, attend the church, and participate in the by-election. I kind of want to start here talking about the CPC because Michael and I have talked about this a lot on the show, about how the CPC is really not a conservative party. And this word conservative is something that people really don't understand. They think it's just a political parlance, but it actually has a very specific meaning. And I know you understand it. And this is, I think, an important point of distinction between your party and the Conservative Party of Canada, even the PPC for that matter. And Max Bernier has been on the show. I have a lot of time for him, but I don't even regard his party as a conservative party, because if you understand conservatives correctly, looking at someone like Roger Scruton and his writings, um, Christianity is core to conservatism. And I've got just a little quote here from a book that Sir Roger Scruton wrote called How to Be a Conservative. And this is what he says. And this really captures the essence of conservatism. And I want to get both of you to maybe comment on this in the context of, Canadian politics. He says, we all have a capacity for love and a deep down knowledge that a life without love is futile. We all have to work to find that love and to create the context in which it can flourish. Likewise with oikophilia, which is a Greek word, just means a love of home. He says, and this is where the political difficulties arise. Oikophiles are in search of a home, and it is to the beauty and heritage of this home that they devote their efforts of conservation. Hence the word conservatism, conservation. They're not globalists, happy to be anywhere on the planet, but localists who look after the place that is theirs. It is this local focus that leads them, us, to make the first and most necessary step towards sustainability, which is to make out a territory and an identity as theirs, and to be protected from predation and embellished and looked after for the benefit of their descendants. And that's the concept of conservatism as I understand it. And you can see running through it, core to it is Christianity, preservation of our Judeo-Christian values. But that's really not what the Conservative Party of Canada is all about, is it, Grant?
Well, I mean, I think that that's right on. And the question is, what are the Conservative Party actually conserving?
Right.
They're not conserving parental authority. We see that in the passing of Bill C-4, and that insertion of the government between a parent and a child. If a parent tries to stop their child going trans, that child or that parent will face 5 years of prosecution criminally, or 5 years in jail. I shudder at that, continue to shudder at that, even though I often bring it up. And that bill was unanimously consented to and passed by the Conservative Party of Canada. And that's basically inserted the government into that sacred relationship. I can't take my 16-year-old into the bar side of Boston Pizza, or I can't let them, make other decisions about joining the military without consent, but we're going to let them undertake irreversible surgery to their genitalia, and I'll be prosecuted. That's not conserving family values. There's certainly a sense of violation of a religious freedom there, in terms of many of the faiths in Canada believing that they should have the right to bring children up in the way that they want them to be brought up. So we're not conserving the parental authority. We're not conserving religious freedom. We're sure not conserving our relationship with the United States, where we're actually engaging in retaliatory tariffs. I mean, what other conservation do you want to talk about? And this is actually, when you distill this conversation down, I often say to the people that I'm talking to, is the Conservative Party has actually left the conservative people, and they either haven't realized it yet, or they have, and they're victims, like people with Stockholm syndrome, who are still emotionally attached to their abusers and can't leave.
Right.
And this is kind of the phenomena that is actually going on in Canada. Like, we have a whole province full of Albertans right now who are sick to death of equalization payments. They're fed up with the let's say Ottawa getting in our lane, if you want to use that metaphor, or the overreach of Central Canada, or the nearly $1 trillion since 1960 of equalization payments. And they're fed up with the distortions that they're told. And yet, when I go and say to them, hey, are you opposed to equalization? Do you want to see a free, strong sovereign, whether that's independent or just sovereign Canada? Do you want to see our energy liberated? And they're like, yeah. And I said, so why would you vote for the Conservative Party of Canada? Because they're going to continue equalization. They're going to continue the federal state concept of our broken federal state. And they're telling us that they will release our energy, but they won't leave the Paris Climate Accord, which caps our energy sector.
Right.
So this is kind of the kind of, I don't know, what is it, a neurosis that we find ourselves in, and this is the discussion. And actually, it's enabling this tyrannical Canada versus the one that Roger Scruton just described in
Right.
terms of being a localist
Mhm.
and loving the culture, values, and traditions of the place you call home.
Right, right. This is a
And
great point.
ultimately,
Yeah.
I'm fighting for that Canada, the one that we love, the one.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've all woken up in the last 5 years and realized that the house called Canada has really shaky foundations, but it doesn't change the hearts, the fire in the hearts of the people
Right.
about the Canada that they love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the tension. And I actually heard that Bruce Party was talking about this two concept of the two Canadas as well.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. I didn't hear it from him, but it's a theme. I think it's like there's a zeitgeist to it, right? Because it is that. There's this one that's oppressively coming on to us through post-nationalism and what that means, the lack of conserving of what we are as a people. And then there's the one that the Canadians are yearning for, but are grappling with how to get it back.
Right.
And
Right.
this is the essence of the conversation. And this is why this by-election is so huge. And this is why I think many of the things that we're going to talk about today are so important and relevant for actually having people think through and discern what Canada they want. Because actually, it's okay for us to travel internationally, but we want our home to feel like home, and we want it to
Right.
emanate the values that we love. And this framework of, the Judeo-Christian principles, as you framed it, I mean, that is the epicenter of this discussion. That's one of our biggest problems, is that we've unplugged our value system from our understanding of the supremacy of God and the rule of law and the preamble to the Charter.
Right.
I don't ever really have to make that argument too much anymore, because Jordan Peterson's made it.
Right.
He just said, you know what, whether you believe in God or not, the values that emanate from, the Judeo-Christian framework of thought have established the most successful countries ever.
Right.
And, discard them at your peril, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is getting back to this deeper conversation about who are we, what do we want for our grandchildren, and are we going in the right direction?
Yeah.
And this is the conversation in Crowfoot, Battle River Crowfoot, and it has such far-reaching implications. And we can't just hang on and hug our blue blanket that's been comforter for Westerners, like that guy Linus and Snoopy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for like we've all done it for the last 40 years as this blue wall to resist the overreach of central Canada. But now it's not working. And what the Liberal government is doing to the country directly, the Conservative Party is facilitating by omission.
Right.
And this is part of why, not a part of, this is probably the central thesis for why I'm contending for Alberta sovereignty, because I think it's the last place in Canada that has the will, the strength, the resiliency, the wealth, the grit, and the faith to actually stand up and birth that conservative country that we want.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
So
Sorry, Grant. I was just on a podcast yesterday where I was describing to somebody who lives in British Columbia, in Vancouver, that I see the Alberta independence movement as actually a conservation program, that we're trying to conserve this concept, this oikophilia. We love our home. We want to preserve this part of Canada, conserve this part of Canada, and keep it our home. And that's really what we're doing. It's not a separatist movement. Folks, we're talking with Grant Abraham, who's written this wonderful book, The Battle for Canada. And it's available, I believe, on his website, also on the UCP website. We're going to provide the links for that. Grant, you were talking about yes.
Just before we do that, I'm going to put up the website that you just referred
thanks,
to,
Michael.
so there's no confusion.
Thank you.
Also, I wanted to thank Michael Surface and Lori Forsberg, and Kathy for sharing this on X. We appreciate that. And so for the rest of you watching, please follow their examples.
Those are wonderful Alberta Prosperity Project friends.
Yes, they are.
Thanks for joining us.
And I wanted to say hi to Michael because I haven't talked to him in quite some time. And anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. I guess I kind of did.
No, you're not interrupting. You're part of this. In
thank
fact, I want to come to you next, Michael, because I want to pick up on something that Grant was saying. Grant was talking about conserving. What, and asked the question. This is a really important question. What do we conserve as conservatives? What are we conserving? And when you drill it down, what we're really doing is we're conserving truth and beauty. And so when we talk about truth, well, of course, we know there's only one source of truth. That's our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and everything, the fruit of that Spirit, it produces beauty. And
Yes.
so that's really what we're conserving. And the way that I describe this to people when they ask me, well, what's beautiful? And I say, well, if you invited me into your home, I don't know why you would, but if you invited me into your home and you wanted to show me what artifacts and things like that are in your home that are important to you, you'd show me what's beautiful to you. You might show
Mm-hmm.
me your art collection. You might show me pictures of your family. You might show me your musical collection. You might show me things that you've made, wood carvings or things like that you've made. All those things that are expressions of truth and beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be examples of what we're conserving, and those are sort of reflections of us in terms of the Imago Dei and us as creators. Where we sort of imitate our Creator. That's when we're our best selves,
Yeah.
and that's what Grant's talking about. That's at the core of Western civilization. There's this concept of the Imago Dei, and that we have the ability to be creators ourselves and produce things that are true and beautiful. And that's really what's being destroyed. What do you think about that, Michael?
Yeah, that's very good. And you and I have talked about this in the past, Leighton, and I know when you come on 5am podcast next or later this month, we're going to talk about this very thing of collaborating and co-laboring, and realizing that not only are we thinking and doing spirits, but we're creative spirits and beings. And I wanted to say this quote from Grover Cleveland. I realize an American president. This is a Canadian audience. I get it, but this is what we want.
We
to
actually have a
conserve.
fair number of American
Yes,
followers.
we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. And so we welcome everybody here, of course, regardless of borders. But Grover Cleveland said the success of a government by the people depends upon the morality, the justice, and the honesty of the people. And so when we look at what our society is like, we have American Apparel essentially saying this very same thing about this Sweeney model has good genes. And of course, it's a play on words, and they mean more than it means whatever you want it to mean as the viewer. And that's why it either you like it or it's offensive to you. But the reason I bring that up is because even think of the sign at our doctor's office. He has a practice.
Right.
And we all know that if you're trying to get better at playing the piano, you have to practice. It doesn't instill a lot of confidence. No apologies to the MDs that might be listening. I just think you should consider the verbiage. But that's the world we live in, where they don't want us to have concrete foundations.
Right.
And then you consider the Soviet architecture or the Yugoslavian architecture
Yeah, if you can
versus,
call it that.
if you can call it that, and then consider the beautiful cathedrals that
Yes.
were built. And
In the
so,
so-called Dark Ages. Yeah.
the so-called Dark Ages,
Yeah.
and the bells and the sound. I have to talk about the cathedral in Victoria, BC. Susan and I would always go to the Christmas cantata at that place, and there was no amplified sound. The cathedral was built where you could have a choir in any part of that building, and it would sound utterly amazing.
Right.
And this fits with what we're talking about, is
Beauty.
this idea that even in architecture, we can use the architecture to accentuate the beauty capability that humans have. And this is one of the things, like Grant was saying, that what are our politicians conserving? What are they
Right.
doing away with?
Right.
And this is a very deep subject. So
Yeah. But I think that it's one word though. It's truth.
yes.
And Grant, coming back to you, I know you and other people are concerned about, for example, the ethics screen that revealed 103 conflicts of interest for Mark Carney. And I guess that's sort of easy pickings, right? He definitely lied about that. He didn't tell people about that. And of course, people are shocked and horrified. But it's too easy just to say that it's the Liberal Party that's guilty of this. It actually, that type of corruption, dishonesty, runs much deeper. And in fact, the CPC are guilty of this too, aren't they?
Well, I think yes. I think this is my challenge in this country right now, because what's happening is, on one hand, we're being told Canada will be the first post-nation state. COVID has provided us with an opportunity for a reset. You know, I'm going to comment, I think, later on in this podcast about the foreign interference and the ample
Yeah.
evidence of severe and sustained foreign interference. We're being told as recently as March of this year, where the Liberal leadership race was on, that Canada is going to be safe and secure inside the New World Order. And the New World Order no longer includes the Americans. It's a subset without the Americans. I don't know if you remember.
I don't think Mr. Trump agrees.
I don't think he agrees at all. He is setting his own. I mean, that's another whole part of the conversation, right, on the geopolitics of this for
Right.
Canada. But the question that I have is that, yes, the Liberals are doing what they're doing. I mean, Mark, there was a farmer here recently, as I was been talking about this issue in this by-election, and we were talking all about this, and he put his hand up in the room, and he said, "Look, are you basically saying that that Justin Trudeau built the foundation of the wall to, it's going to, wall off what our real nation is about from us, or just, you know, you know, block us out of what our future is? And are you saying that Mark Carney is here to basically build the wall on Trudeau's foundation?" And I thought, what a powerful and simple metaphor for what's
Yeah.
it is
Beautiful.
that. So
Hmm.
I don't worry too much about the fact that, I
The
mean,
wisdom of farmers.
I don't. It is the wisdom of
It
farmers.
is. I
But
mean, yeah.
this concept of the liberals saying what they're going to do, and we're seeing our country unravel. And if I've talked to people all across the nation, and if I hear one theme, it's, where did our country go? And
Yeah.
these changes, these implementations of policy of Agenda 2030 with regard to limiting the principles of ownership or wealth, or figuring out how to tax rainwater on barns in Ontario. I mean, that's all coming from an agenda to weaken Canadians and strengthen a centralist government. And so when I talk to Canadians, I'll say, look, this is what the Liberal government's doing. They've said it. They've said it repeatedly on the record. But when was the last time you ever heard a Conservative MP or leader saying, excuse me, can you please tell us what post-nationalism means?
Right.
Can you explain what you mean by reset, please? Because we like our country. We don't want to be reset. And if it is being reset, how's it going to be better? Or is it going to be worse, and you just don't want to tell us with your minority government
Right.
that's changing it? And why won't you tell us about the foreign interference? What does it mean to be a part of this new world order? And we've had, 3 Conservative leadership races. We've had 3 federal elections. You've never heard a federal Conservative MP or leader ask any of those questions anywhere.
Right.
And we wonder why our country's being unraveled. So I say, I went through a whole process, because I have pretty impeccable Conservative, DNA in terms of values.
Hmm.
And I had to go through this kind of emotional process as a Canadian when I was watching all this stuff happen, and say, what's going on here? Are they just not seeing it? Are they dim? Are they lazy?
Hmm.
And then I kind of moved to more of a legal analysis. What is this? Is this negligence? Is this reckless?
Hmm.
And as the more evidence that I gathered, and I started to look at this kind of what I would call a mens rea trail, if you will, that concept
Yes.
of a guilty mind.
Yes, the guilty mind.
I got to
Mhm.
the place where I was like, whoa, this can't be happening unless they're a part of it, unless they're complicit.
Right. Hmm.
Because, why wouldn't you challenge these things? We're seeing the country unravel. And so, to me, that's the greatest threat to the country right now, is that the people that want to see the change and see the country conserve, as you've raised the point,
Right.
are under this spell of a Pied Piper, particularly in Battle River Crowfoot, that's leading us over the same cliff as the Conservative Party. And how does one wake them up, and at least to look at this evidence and have the conversation about it? I think that's why we're sitting here on a beautiful Saturday afternoon in the beginning of August to talk about this stuff.
Right.
It's by election, and it matters. It matters now because we want that Scrutton image of our world, our local environment that we call home. It's the Shire. We want our
Yes.
Shire.
That's
Yeah,
it.
that's
That's
for
it.
sure.
And we're willing to stand up for it. When I say we, I mean, people who have a concept of what conservatism is. Folks, we're talking with Grant Abraham, also our good friend Michael Klassen. Grant is the author of a book called The Battle for the Soul of Canada, Firing the Forge. It's a great book, and it sets out a lot of the ideas in more detail that we're talking about tonight, including a discrete vision of Canada. Grant founded a party which has some really important policies. And one of them is protecting Canadian sovereignty by opposing globalist influences from organizations like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and World Economic Forum. He's talked a little bit about that. Also, scrapping carbon taxes and net zero policies to support farmers and the energy sector. Restoring parental rights and opposing legislation like Bill C4, which he believes undermines family authority. And also banning medical assistance in dying and prioritizing addiction recovery. And implementing a temporary moratorium on immigration to address housing and infrastructure issues. So these are some of the key core policies. But I think it goes deeper than that. And Grant, if you would, let's talk more about this foreign interference problem, because we heard during the election that actually there was proven Chinese interference there was proven Chinese interference in the election, in that they were actually supporting openly Mark Carney in the Liberal Party, and using Canadian social media to do that. But that's only one example of the problem, and it's deeper than that, isn't it?
Well, it really is, and it's been going on for a long time. I cover that issue in my book, going right back to 2011. The leader of CSIS was commenting, the director of CSIS was commenting on it back on a CBC interview. I don't have the citation, but it's noted in the book. And I think for me, like for all of us in Canada, we weren't really worried about what was going on in Canada, apart from being maybe a disgruntled Westerners or the normal last chapter of our political reality in Canada, until kind of the COVID Trudeau reality hit. And when I listened to a YouTube clip in the spring of 2020 by an MP called David McGuinty, and he was the chair
Right.
of NSICOP committee, which stands for the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. He went on YouTube and he kind of brought this verbal report that was the bits that he could say that was unclassified. And when I listened to it, I mean, it was shocking. And I want to comment a little bit about that to get this part of the conversation going, because I think a lot of Canadians just think, well, there's nothing we can do, let's put this to bed.
Right.
While the country is, we're talking about it now. The country's being overrun by, let's call it spies. We used to call it spies and people that were guilty of treason. Now we call it agents of foreign interference and let's say cowards who aren't prepared to stand up and actually contend for the nation within the legal framework that exists. And so he came out, this report came out was given to Justin Trudeau on the 30th of August, 2019. And
Wow.
David McGuinty.
6 years ago. Wow.
It is, yeah. He brought out this very unusual to me, that a Liberal MP would bring this out and start to tell Canadians. And what he said is that this is a government response to foreign interference. He identified the threat as, I quote, demonstrating a vulnerability to foreign actors seeking to covertly and inappropriately interfere with or exert influence in Canada. And he went on and he quoted a page that he was obviously allowed to reference. And let me just read you his
Yeah,
oral
please do.
comments. He said, At paragraph 189 on page 77, he's referencing the NSICOP report that he can't show us. He says the committee believes there is ample evidence that Canada is the target of significant and sustained foreign interference activities. We believe Canada is targeted to exploit the openness of our society and penetrate our fundamental institutions to meet their objectives. They target ethno-cultural communities, seek to corrupt the political process, manipulate the media, and attempt to curate debate on post-secondary campuses.
Right.
Each of
Which
these
we're seeing.
Yeah, we absolutely are. Each of these activities pose a significant threat, a significant risk to the rights and freedoms of Canadians and to the country's sovereignty. They are a clear threat to the security of Canada. And so we're told this in the spring of 2020 on YouTube, in this media kind of presentation that he gave. And this became a discussion then that not that many people tuned into. But when I was listening to this, and as I've been researching and I've done a lot more work in terms of understanding that report, I'm seeing that he is using language that actually relates to a piece of legislation that we used to call the State Secrets Act. Or it's now called the Foreign Interference and Security of Information Act, 1985. And it talks about the offenses that come with... It
was a Cold War legislation originally, as I remember.
It was, but they updated it, and it was actually quite intelligent. I've now read it at kind of in depth, and I think there's a conversation here. But the question politically is, why can't the Canadians be told this? Okay, because it's a part of the undermining. You've already cited the foreign interference, the Chinese. Or their agents. We have 11 MPs in the last election that were either the objects of influence or direct agents.
We've proven interference in the last 3 federal elections from China, just from China.
And yet the Canadian people somehow in our legal structures don't seem to be able to be told. And I found it quite interesting because I brought this point up this week at the debate, in the by-election debate.
Right, I recall it in Red Deer.
It was in Camrose.
Right.
And I was very surprised at the crowd and even the news commentation, because everyone just took the position that this matter is closed. There's nothing that Pierre Poilievre can do about it. And yet the legislation is very clear. It makes it, what they say is true, but it's only half the truth. The truth is, yes, if you disclose state secrets out of turn, let's say, in layman's language, you do face a sentence of 14 years. But there's actually a lot of exceptions in the legislation that allow you to be immune from prosecution. For instance, if it's in the national interest, if it is exigent to the degree that it's going to protect against,
which are being very broadly interpreted these days,
bodily harm or against murder, and it goes through and it identifies particularly influence into the political process, and the legislation actually defines that influence as any influence of proceedings of a legislative body. The development of a legislative proposal, development or amendment of any policy or program, the making of a decision by a public office holder of government that includes the awarding of contracts.
Well, we know that's happening.
Sure, well, we can talk about the BC Ferries if you want. The holding of an election or a referendum, if there's influence of a holding of an election or referendum, or the nomination of a candidate in an election, or the development of an election platform. So we're right into the real. These are the things that actually, I mean, that's 40 years ago now that legislation was updated, and I found it actually almost comforting and familiar in terms of the clarity with which it's actually written. We're not left to these huge terms like best interests,
Right. Yeah.
openly. Um, and they talk about some other things that I think are worth our readers or our listeners
Mm-hmm.
understanding. Like they say, they talk about these are the offenses that they're talking about of the foreign actors. They say, for the purpose of this act, a person is prejudicial to the safety or interests of the state if a person commits in Canada against the laws of Canada or a province that is punishable, against the laws of Canada in order to advance a political, religious, or ideological purpose, objective, or cause, or to benefit that foreign entity. So that's the causal charge, if you will, for a foreign actor that's acting against the nation. And
Mm-hmm.
yet we've just read the David McGuinty report that's talking about the undermining of our education, our political process, and this correlation between that report that David McGuinty gave and the language of this legislation is pretty clear and consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I asked the question, and I was really surprised at both the response of the people in the room in Camrose and also the online response after that, which is, why are you bringing this up? This is a political liberal talking point. You know,
Right.
the liberals are saying, why won't Polyev get his security clearance? Well, they why won't he get his security clearance? Of course they can say that because they don't need to disclose it because they're trying to undermine the nation. But Polyev should be, and people believe him to be, the one that's actually going to contend for clarity and the truth in Canada, and yet he won't get it. And we're being
Mm-hmm.
told that he can't get it because his hands are tied, like a non-disclosure agreement, and
Uh,
therefore the whole nation kind of sits in this limbo with these foreign actors undermining our sovereignty, but we can't do anything about it. And so I think part of this conversation, I think, for us to have is, when do we say, hey, we understand that there's common law defenses. If we, it's wrong to hit someone, that's a battery or assault and
right.
battery, if you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it that, unless unless they're trying to steal your child,
Right.
then you have the defense of self-defense.
Right.
And in this case, if we're going to protect, if there were foreign troops coming over the fields here, and I had to kind of break my hotel window to defend the nation, yes, I've created probably criminal damage, maybe mischief, you know,
Oh boy,
mischief,
because you get
right?
7 to 9 years for that in Canada.
For breaking the window, except that I have a defense. The
Right.
defense is called necessity,
Right.
because I'm actually responding to a higher threat or a higher purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
even just in common law, I think Mr. Polyev would have the argument that he could be defending the nation if it was shown that disclosing this information is going to protect the nation.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if it isn't that, then why wouldn't you just tell us that and say that the threat of foreign interference is not severe enough to disclose the secret information that I
Mm-hmm.
have, that the government has shown me.
Right.
But we're left in this implausible and impossible position where we have foreign interference at work rampantly.
Right.
And so this is a challenge. This is a real challenge because a first or a second year law student could go through that piece of legislation and find the charges and the defenses, both the charges against the foreign actors and what they're doing wrong in the country, and find the defenses for someone who had the information and could disclose it to preserve our nation, to conserve
Right.
our nation,
Right.
right? Which goes right back to your point.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I just want to comment on, and this really surprised me because I reread this legislation today, and they're talking about things that qualify as offenses by agents of foreign governments, okay, and or working with agents of foreign governments. And it says, for the purpose of this act, a person is prejudicial to the safety or interests of the state if a person develops or uses anything that is intended or has the capability to cause death or serious bodily injury to a significant number of people by means of one, toxic or poisonous chemicals or their precursors. Two, a microbial or other biological agent or
Like COVID-19.
including a disease organism.
Ah,
Okay,
yeah.
radiation or an explosion. And I
Mhm.
was like, wow. I mean, we look at fentanyl production
Yes.
in terms of
Mhm.
destabilizing the nation and the precursors
Yeah.
that are coming into our country. And so this language, in so many ways, is coming out of legislation we have on the books in the country. And where are the patriots that are elected to actually stand to speak the truth for the
Right.
people? That's what the
Right.
loyal opposition is supposed to do.
Right.
You
And this
know,
issue, yeah, this foreign interference too is not talked about enough, but it might explain why the United States is suddenly so interested in
Mm-hmm.
Canada. For a long time, we were sort of Rob Williams described us as a loft apartment over a great party. America's top hat. We were an afterthought. Suddenly,
Uh-huh.
the Americans are very interested in what's going on in Canada. That might explain that in part. And then when you look at what's happening in the United States, I mean, they're talking about prosecuting a former president, Barack Obama, because of his involvement with foreign actors and foreign agents, and specifically Russia, in destabilizing the American state. So that might explain that situation as well. But Michael
Yes,
noted that we have a couple of
we
comments, right,
do.
Michael?
Yeah, so Doug was first. He's watching on X. So shout out to all the people on X. And as I'm going to bring this up, please like, share, subscribe, all those great things. So Doug was asking, what's the substantive difference between the
That's a great question.
United
Yeah,
Party of Canada, not the provincial UCP, the UPC,
yeah.
ladies and
Well,
gentlemen?
what do you say, Grant? I think I know, but I'm pretty sure you can say it better.
well, I think there's kind of two that are significant. One is an ideological significance, and the other is really the agenda in relation to sovereignty and independence of Alberta. I'll start there. I say that in order to actually conserve or preserve the people of Canada, the only province that has the strength, will, tenacity, faith, grit, to actually break away from what I now refer to as a sinking boat is Alberta, and to preserve our culture, values, traditions, ethics, whatever term you wish to use. Alberta has the means to do that on its own. When I say that, I'm talking about losing the crown. I'm talking about establishing a constitutional republic with unalienable rights entrenched into the sovereignty of the people. And you know, if you stop sending $20 billion to a dysfunctional central Canada, you can see a lot of taxes dropped. I think APP's done some tremendous work
Yes, they
on
have.
this in
Hmm.
terms of the economic benefits. It's really we're maybe only down to a user tax, and I should read Jeff Rath's paper again. It's profound. So that's a big piece. I think the PPC is very much a federally orientated party. So my view is that once we actually preserve Alberta as a template for what Canadians really want, the Canada we love, if you will, then I think, and the money stops flowing to the dysfunctionality of the other provinces, it won't take very long for them to unravel, and they start to look at the value system that's been entrenched in Alberta and be looking over the fence, and the grass will be greener.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're a benevolent people here in Western Canada, and in Alberta in particular. We have been for decades in terms of the money we've sent to contribute to this federal Canada. And we'll be saying to them, you're welcome to join into this, but it will be under a new constitution with the value and the framework that we've set in place.
Hmm.
And in that sense, we're reforging Canada from the broken pieces.
Right,
That's a
right,
big,
right.
a
It is.
massively
Yeah.
different narrative than what PPC is
Yeah.
talking about.
So that answer then actually fits really well with our friend Wes's question. I'm going to bring it
Okay,
up
Wes.
here.
Wes, by the way, was at the debate the other night, Grant.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hi, Wes. Thanks. Let me read your question.
I was wondering what
I'll-
your thoughts
I'll
are
bring it
about
back
the
up.
flag situation. Have you heard about this, Grant, that Thomas Lukaszuk is trying to get businesses to take down Alberta flags?
Yes.
And I'll just comment on this before Grant answers.
Hmm.
It really is lamentable that people like Mr. Lukaszuk came to Canada to escape the tyranny of a nation like Poland, where he lived, which was a totalitarian state when he lived there. He came to Alberta, was sheltered here, flourished here, became a high ranking member of our government, and now brings with him the same totalitarianism that he escaped from. And I find this is very, very lamentable. And unfortunately, it is typical of some people who come to countries who escape tyranny, and sadly, they bring the values that cause tyranny with them. But anyway, Grant, you go ahead. I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say, but I'm interested to hear your answer. Go ahead.
Well, I think that a negative referendum is the same thing as a positive referendum. It depends on your vote on whichever one comes.
Interesting.
You know,
Okay.
I mean, it isn't technically the case. I think if I understand that Elections Alberta is litigating now the question that was submitted by the APP.
Yes.
I'm not surprised at that at all. I expect that there will be all kinds of other resistance, and I worry that Albertans will get frustrated because that gets slow walked or gaslit that agenda.
Hmm.
And we could have a constitutional conversation here about other remedies and channels with which to approach what is actually Alberta sovereignty under statute,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a conversation. So,
Yeah.
I think there's going to be all kinds of forces at work um, that are going to oppose the free people of Canada that want independence, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
not just in Alberta but in Canada.
Hmm.
And
Right.
I have seen there are people across this country that are hoping that Alberta separates because they know that in the seeds of Alberta separating and establishing a new nation on truth, justice, and uprightness, that at some point they'll be liberated.
But that's certainly
Hmm.
Bruce Party's view, and he's no conservative, by the way. He's just, yeah, but I joke with him. He calls himself a classical liberal, and I say, well, a classical liberal 10 years ago now is a staunch conservative.
Yeah.
But one of the other important differences, as I see it, between the PPC and your party, Grant, is that the PPC, the two really, and I'm interested to get your take on this. The PPC is fundamentally secular. They talk about, they pay lip service to preservation of Canadian values, traditional values, but they really don't define them the way your party does. That's one part of it. One important difference, and that the other one is the PPC again talks about being a grassroots party, but it doesn't seem to have really any grassroots support. Whereas your party really is focused on grassroots. You're building something from literally from the ground up, and it's growing, right?
It absolutely is, and this discussion about, let's say, the value framework. If you want to put it in the context of libertarianism or humanism or whatever, we're having this conversation about the notion of the centrality of the supremacy of God and the values that emanate from that. And one thing that I've seen across the country is that people will put our plight as a nation right now into this framework of good and evil, light and darkness. And
Right.
so when people ask me this question, and it's interesting for me this last 2 years because I got two extreme responses in most cases when I gave them the answer. And the answer that I give people is do we believe that we're in a battle of good and evil and light and darkness? And it's not about conservatism and liberalism or red and blue. And they'll say absolutely, and I'll say, well, okay, so when I actually break down libertarianism, what I see is a humanitarian framework that actually has a vacuum that removes God from the discussion. When you really
Right.
auger
Mm-hmm.
into it,
Mm-hmm.
that's where that lands. And they'll
Yeah.
say, yeah. And then I'll say, well, okay, so if you believe that we're in a good and evil, light and darkness, whatever, spiritual war, if you want to couch it that way, I'll say, well, how do you fight against darkness if you deny the existence of the source of light?
Right.
And I can't live in that house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we started the new party, because these are values, and whether they're recognized or not, when people actually look at it and think about it, their eyes open to that reality. And we I talk about the supremacy of God, and every once in a while someone will push me with a question on this, and I'll say, well, the supremacy of God in our preamble is the Christian God.
Right.
Let's name him. It's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Right.
And I'll say, despite what may be my own perspective on Christian faith, I'll say the best thing about that God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is that he radically gives everyone the right to freely refuse him.
Yes.
And that is the freedom, that is the framework for our freedom of religion and freedom of thought, conscience, and belief.
Amen.
And,
Amen.
and we shouldn't torpedo that because we get our backs up talking about God. That's a value connection that we need to conserve, to go back to your point.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Leighton, if I could jump in, just
Sure.
Grant, on your thought. So, our friends who are libertarians or anarcho-capitalists or into the volunteerism, it's like, what is your source to be this good, upstanding libertarian or anarcho-capitalist or the volunteerist? And I totally get these ideas of wanting to throw off the shackles of the man, but at the end of the day, then where is our guiding principle? What's that light guiding us through the darkness? So you brought up an excellent point of who is behind the big letter G.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a square and compass, but there's that letter G. So who is that one? And so thanks for that, Grant. Speaking of names that start with G.
Well, I think these are some of the conversations that we really need to have. I know I've listened to Bruce Party talk about this, and when he talks about it, he doesn't talk about a framework that's based upon that value framework per se.
No, he doesn't.
He tries to couch it in terms of meritorious values that actually have an accountability.
And you have to teach children to be good. It's not their default setting to share their toys. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But that's classical liberalism is.
But I think Bruce Party's right. He wrote a paper once that irritated me because he was right, and he said the free movement is going to have a hard time in this space because ultimately there's a tribal reality to these two perspectives.
Yes.
And so when I hear about a new constitution being written for Alberta, I kind of wonder, who's crafting that and what is.
I worked on it a little bit.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So that that's something we need to contend for, and those are big distinctions between what we're doing inside the United Party of Canada and the PPC.
Yeah.
So huge distinctions.
Actually. Yeah, there's a great quotation from Soren Kierkegaard that really applies to what's going on in Canada right now. And that is, there are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true, and the other is to refuse to believe what is true. And what is true in Canada right now is that the values that we're talking about and the God that we're talking about is under attack. You have to be blind not to see it. And that's really when you're talking about the attack on Alberta, largely it's because in Alberta we have this ethic, and it's driving. I can tell you it's at the root of the Alberta Prosperity Project. I can tell you I went around Alberta 2 or 3 years ago, and I was talking to people at town halls, and I was given the job of talking about prosperity. What does prosperity mean in Alberta Prosperity Project? And I told people I used the biblical concept of prosperity. That is, we live in a world of abundance. The earth is abundant beyond human imagination. We don't even understand all the ways that our earth is abundant. We're only beginning to discover the secrets of this planet that God created for us. And so, but all the stuff that we're up against is based upon a vision of the world that is anti-abundance. It's anti-scriptural. right? Everything is scarcity, war, famine, poverty, globalism, the idea that we're going to run out of fossil fuels, that we're producing too much CO2, that we're going to destroy everything on this planet by overconsumption, that there's too many people. It's all based upon a scarcity mindset. And it's, it comes down to this good and evil principalities and power struggle that's going on. And I think, and I'd be interested to get your take on this, both of you. It seems to me that Canada has become the focal point of the struggle in a lot of ways. Um, and so we're experiencing this very vividly in our country. And I trust that I have faith that
Mhm.
God has a purpose for this. And maybe the people of this country are being tested to see whether we're worthy of a really, really bright future that I know Grant believes in, because
Mhm.
that's part of the ethos of his party and his personal philosophy and his the way he thinks. But what do you think about that? Do you think it's possible that maybe all of this is happening in Canada
Mhm.
for a very good reason? What do you think about that, Michael?
Well, I was looking at an image yesterday that was contrasting Rhodesia from the 70s to now. And we could look at South Africa from the 80s or 90s to now. And now we look at Canada. And even in my young mind, we had some friends of friends who were from South Africa. And so we heard a lot about varying stories. And I knew a fellow whose family had to leave Rhodesia and lost everything. And I think there's parallels
Mm.
in how we can follow the money and intention. And there's, coming back to what you said, Leighton, there's the kingdom of stealing, killing, and destroying, and there's the kingdom of abundance. And
Yes.
when we look at the track record of, what do you call them, the collectivists, the
Yes.
Bolsheviks, the progressives. So no thanks to the Frankfurt School people. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have time to study, look up those dastardly people. And there's another word that rhymes with dastardly. But just a little levity there, Leighton. But there is only two kingdoms, and it seems like there's less and less middle ground.
Yes.
What
Yes.
else can you say?
Yeah.
Grant might have a more in-depth
Well,
answer, but
yeah, Grant, in Genesis, the first command that goes out is go forth, be fruitful, and multiply. And that seems to be everything that our government in Ottawa is against. What do you think about this? Do you think that Canada could be the battleground for this good and evil struggle that you're talking about?
I think it is. I think that is what is within the seed of Justin Trudeau's comment when he said Canada will be the first post nation state.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on. We like to talk there not being freedom of expression in Canada. But when I look at a lot of things that I see on the news, there's a lot of freedom of expression in Canada. If you're a Palestinian, you want to burn our
Right.
flag and call for death for Canada. And it always intrigues me that the conservative MPs will say, well, we oppose anti Semitism. Well, as if anti Semitism, climbed out of the microwave and was attacking the Jews, right? It's
Right.
as though it's some inanimate object. And the reality is that we need to have a conversation in Canada about the compatibility of militant Islam with our culture, values, and traditions. And
Yeah.
these are some of the conversations that we're not having at a root issue. We're just having sound bites at a symptom
Mhm.
issue. And to your comment, Michael,
Mhm.
Rhodesia and Zimbabwe is a good example of kind of the color revolution,
Yes.
as is South Africa. The problem is that both are kind of colonial contexts, which make it harder to make the conversation happen. When I look at what's happening, it's really down to Canadians to decide, even if they don't identify it as post nationalism. I hear a lot
Mhm.
of people referring to this threat as the WEF, or they're seeing these international treaties that come from the UN, which is actually what post nationalism is about, undermining what we are as a people. and that is the agenda. And I watched. I was in the UK at the time when the UK left the EU. The British people left the European Union because they were seeing the erosion and loss of their culture, values, traditions, laws, and borders, and they said enough. And the number one advocate against the British people leaving the EU after that referendum was the chairman of the Bank of England, who is now our prime minister.
Yes.
And you know, he is a globalist rock star groupie that wants to invoke a new world order to operate on the exact kind of scarcity that you're talking about, and undermine the values that actually built this country, which is community, tenacity, self-sufficiency, faith, the creation of wealth for our children and our grandchildren, creating of communities around healthy food, whatever value that has been brought forward into our nation from the people that settled it, and in fact the foundation stones of this nation. And so there's an active working against that. And you know, one of the reasons that I'm engaging this at a political level is because I believe that we need to exhaust all avenues to engage this discussion about who we are as a people peacefully, and bring a framework to allow people to express themselves in a productive way, because there's a lot of people that would be interested in doing it in a counterproductive way, and
Yes.
I'm hoping that we can find
Even a violent way.
Okay, yeah, yeah, exactly. And so it's time. People say to me, Grant, you're running in Battle River Crowfoot, you're running against Pierre Poilievre. What can one guy do? And my question, my retort to that is, you've had 140 plus MPs for 10 years who haven't done anything.
Right.
We're in this mess because we've had 70 years of the finest conservative thought going, and we're actually being confronted with what we are as a people being undermined. So release one guy, call it a 2-year job description, because it may well be we're not that far away from another general election.
It's true.
I'm going to be contending for these values and starting to confront the truth of what's actually going on. I mean, let me go on here for 1 second and just say, like, look at this, even this example of the U.S. President Trump's comments to Canada. What did he say? He said, you're bad neighbors and you have a dirty backyard. He said, fix your fence, fix your border, and clean up human trafficking and fentanyl production. He wasn't talking about, you know, a few guys sneaking a few briefcases of fentanyl.
We're talking about super labs all over the country. Yeah.
Industrial scale production. The Toronto Dominion Bank just had a $4 billion money laundering fine in the U.S. for laundering crime money.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a small thing. If that's the fine, imagine what was actually being being laundered. So what does the Liberal government do to that? They say elbows up, Trump's orange man bad. We need to have retaliatory tariffs, as if in our lifetimes we've ever seen a successful trade war between Canada and the U.S. I mean, that's crazy. But I mean, what are we conserving, you ask? What did Pierre Poilievre roll out as an election platform policy with regard to our U.S. economic framework? Retaliatory tariffs.
Yes, right.
And basically that is exposing the Canadian people and their businesses to higher costs, and not identifying the fact that what's running fentanyl production and human trafficking is organized crime.
Right.
So if I were prime minister, I'd be saying, hey, let's actually look at this issue and say, you know, what's behind organized crime are gangs or organized crime. Let's define that as terrorist organizations, and let's actually increase and implement an increasing framework for the use of force to eradicate these threats to our people. Everybody in Canada wants those things cleaned up. But no one in the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party were actually prepared to engage what was really being said by President Trump. So when he says, that we are going to be the 51st state, I think he's really saying to us, you guys better clean up your act, because this whole notion of you drifting towards some kind of neo-Marxist, technocratic, fascist state is not what we're going to have as a neighbor on our northern border.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you'll be Americans before you're that.
Wow.
And
Well stated.
so I look and I say, okay, well, we better get ahead of that and start having the real conversations and waking Canadians up
Mm-hmm.
on these issues. And I'm hoping, I'm praying that Canadians will see this, because we need to conserve what are the culture, values, traditions, wealth, well-being, flourishing, the shalom of the Canadian
Yeah.
people.
Truth and beauty. Mm-hmm.
Truth and beauty.
Mhm.
And that's a great way to encapsulate it of
Yeah.
Canadian people. And Alberta's the place.
Yeah.
Alberta's the place to do that.
Beautifully stated. Folks, we've spent the last hour or so with our friend Grant Abraham, who has written this book, The Battle for the Soul of Canada. Highly recommend it. It's on our reading list for the show. He's also the founder and leader of the United Party of Canada, and he's running in the by-elections occurring on August the 18th here in Alberta in the Battle River riding. He's going up against no less than the Conservative Party of Canada leader, Pierre Poilievre, and we wish him well. We might be talking to Canada's Javier Milei. I hope that's true. I hope that comes to fruition. I think you'd be a tremendous leader of this country, and I hope God blesses you in your political journey, you and your party, Grant. So with that, Michael, I wonder if you might maybe help us close off with a prayer.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll definitely have to have this. I'm sure, Leighton, we could go for another 2 hours.
Well, we'll
But,
have to have Grant back
part-
and maybe talk
part
more
2 and 3.
particularly. He's very busy right now. Maybe
Okay.
after he finishes this little election,
That's
maybe we can
right.
come back and we could talk more about his book.
Yes.
That might be something.
Yeah,
If you're willing to do that, Grant, we'd love to
Love
have
to,
you on the
yeah.
show and record an episode.
But from our lips to God's ears, which thank you, Father, that we can call you Father, and that we can call on the name above all names, Jesus Christ, for salvation and life and breath and guidance and wisdom. And thank you for this opportunity to speak in freedom and to speak freely. We pray that these rights will be preserved for generations to come in Canada. And may this nation be for the healing of the nations. And may, when people think of from the river to the ends of the earth, not from the river to the sea, may Canada be a beacon for light and salvation and abundance amongst the nations of the world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen, amen. Well, there you have it, folks. Another edition of the Gray Matter live stream.
Mhm.
I want to thank Michael for that wonderful prayer and for being here and for putting this all together. And especially I want to thank our guest, Grant Abraham, for being here and sharing his ideas and his thoughts about Canada. His message is so vital and really beautiful to hear for all Canadians. And we hope that you've enjoyed this Gray Matter live stream. Share it widely. Please comment and visit the UPC website as well for more information about the party and how you can get involved. You can donate to support the party. I recommend that you order Grant's book, which is wonderful. But you can get more information also by getting directly in touch with him. We provided all of the links for not only his election campaign but also for the party. I'm sure that he would love to hear from you and to answer your questions. So thanks everyone for joining us on this beautiful Saturday evening that God has given us. God bless all of you, and thank you for joining us. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for the conversation, gentlemen. All the best.